Tanse, good afternoon. I'm Chris Nachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith made a long-awaited announcement on Thursday by signing an energy pipeline memorandum of understanding in Alberta. Some say the MOU goes too far in putting in place conditions to build an oil pipeline from Alberta to the west coast. Others say it doesn't go far enough. But as APTN's Fraser Needham reports, the Prime Minister says no pipeline project will go forward without First Nations support.
It was all smiles Thursday morning at a press conference in Calgary for the formal signing of the pipeline MOU between the Prime Minister and Alberta Premier.
At the core of the agreement, of course, is a priority to have a pipeline to Asia. That's going to make Canada stronger, more independent, more resilient, more sustainable.
As part of the MOU, the Government of Alberta commits to advance the development of a bitumen pipeline to Asian markets that offers opportunities for Indigenous co-ownership and other economic benefits. Use the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to help backstop Indigenous co-ownership of the pipeline and extend the Alberta Carbon Capture Incentive Program. In return, Canada agrees to not implement the oil and gas emissions cap, immediately suspend the clean electricity regulations in Alberta pending a new carbon pricing agreement, declare the Alberta pipeline as a priority that offers opportunities for Indigenous co-ownership and as a project of national interest that will be referred to the Major Projects Office, use the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program to backstop Indigenous co-ownership of the pipeline. Later speaking to BC workers, Carney was asked by media about First Nations in the province that oppose an oil pipeline to the coast and had this to say.
There needs to be full partnership, including equity ownership, substantial economic benefits with First Nations in Alberta, First Nations in British Columbia, as well as agreement and substantial economic benefits for the people of British Columbia. So we look at this as the start of a process. We've created some of the necessary conditions for this to happen. But there's a lot more work to do, and very much in the spirit of partnership.
During a question period in the House of Commons, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said the Prime Minister and Liberal government have no intention of seeing an oil pipeline built.
What he will do is delay it for several years until after a prospective election during which he can dangle a possible pipeline in front of the people, but after which he can hand veto power that is not in the Constitution over to the BC NDP Premier, who will block the thing from ever happening. Isn't it true that this isn't a pipeline? It's a pipe dream.
Well, in a virtual press conference, Green Party leader Elizabeth May said the MOU completely rejects Canada's previous climate policy.
But this is simply unimaginable. This is a betrayal of so many different values, so many different agreements, so many different orders of rights and existing Canadian law. It completely sets the stage for the complete abandonment of Canada's climate policy. It is simply shocking.
Late Thursday afternoon on X, formerly known as Twitter, former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault announced he is resigning from Cabinet as a result of the MOU. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Now to BC, where reaction has been swift about the news of the MOU being signed in Calgary for the proposed pipeline from Alberta to BC. APTN's Sina House has this story.
Great day for Alberta. It's a great day for Canada. And, at the heart of what is a multifaceted agreement, we have more work to do.
And Premier David Eby would agree there is more work to do. He held a press conference outside of the BC legislature to talk about his thoughts on the MOU.
We need to make sure that this project doesn't become an energy vampire with all of the variables that have yet to be fulfilled. No proponent, no route, no money, no First Nation support, that it cannot draw limited federal resources, limited Indigenous governance resources, limited provincial resources away from the real projects that will employ people, provide the country with money that we desperately need, and provide investment and access to global markets to deepen our trade relationships overseas.
Meanwhile, it was all smiles in Calgary as Prime Minister Carney and Alberta Premier Smith shook hands to make a first step in developing a proposed pipeline project that would bring oil through BC to the coast, then sold to global markets. However, they have failed to involve the First Nations or the BC government in this plan. AFN Regional Chief Terry Chigi says this is like Northern Gateway 2.0.
I think it's a diplomatic and political misstep on our behalf to leave British Columbia, perhaps Premier Eby, but many First Nations that are along the route that will take majority of the risk. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and where will this pipeline breach, but also as with the Hecate Strait, and as we've seen before with tankers such as Exxon Valdez, we've seen other ships run aground in and around this area.
But the position of this government is very clear. The oil tanker ban off the North Coast is the foundation of $1.7 billion in economic activity, thousands of jobs. Today, at the legislature, we have seafood producers who are visiting, people who spend their lives out on the ocean, who depend on the clean waters off our coast to put the seafood on your plate across the country, who are terrified of an oil tanker spill destroying their way of life.
The Alberta government plans on submitting a proposal to build this new pipeline this spring. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Mining has long been a key contributor to the economy of Northwest Territories. But what does Indigenous ownership in resource development look like? Our APTN reporter Charlotte Morit-Jacobs takes a look at the sector's historic legacy, current challenges, and what's to come from future nation-to-nation building projects.
Mining industry could work in our favor.
Proactive planning, regulatory modernization, and infrastructure investment are just some of the topics being discussed by the Yellowknives Dene First Nation in Deda, Northwest Territories.
The capacity that we've built in the last 25 years is in supporting the resource industry.
With the decline of the diamond industry, Métis and Dene in Treaty 8 and Treaty 11 are entertaining more applications for resource development. And that comes with more workshops on co-management from the Mackenzie Land and Water Review Board, who regulate resource projects by issuing, amending, and enforcing licenses to industry. The board includes Indigenous nominee appointed representatives like Joan from Fort Liard.
They have land monitors, they have guardians in most communities.
And YKDFN membership provide feedback.
I travel to all these abandoned mines throughout with my business, and I see the destruction. I see everything that's there.
Mark Cleve Phillips of the Mackenzie Land and Water Review Board says they are seeking community engagement earlier and more continuously when assessing projects.
It's not one thing. It's not just about water. It's not just about caribou. It's not just about community well-being. It's how all of those things are being impacted by these big developments. And these big developments are at the scale where all things are being impacted, and they're being impacted cumulatively with past projects, these legacy projects like Giant Mine, but also the impacts that they're feeling from projects all around the north.
After 23 years, Divik Diamond Mine, nearly 400 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife, will cease productions in March 2026. It's one of 3 diamond mines, all slated to wind down by 2030. Last year, diamonds were responsible for 16% of the NWT's gross domestic product. Divik is holding public information sessions across Acacho, Métis, and Klitschko communities, explaining their closure plans. Divik's closure manager, Gord Stevenson, says more traditional knowledge is being worked into the standard water license renewal.
And we've had many traditional knowledge input sessions, well over 20, with various feedbacks to shape the closure designs and shape the closure plans. And we've actually started executing on some of those and delivering some of those closure plans. And then now when we get into closure, we'll have the feedback loop through the traditional knowledge monitoring program.
With a new federal budget, Indigenous governments are swiftly forming new partnerships. There was a memorandum of understanding signed on November 24th between the Yellowknives Dene and the Klitschko government to jointly lead the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor, which will include a proposed all-season road to connect the NWT to a port in Grays Bay, Nunavut. Forum panelist Daryl Bolio is a member of the Yellowknives Dene and head of Denendeh Investments Incorporated. He says the 2 unsettled land claims, the Decho and the Acacho, are huge stumbling blocks. Both have historically limited royalty sharing in mining projects.
We gotta come to an understanding and an agreement on lands and resources and governance. That's the foundation. so we can move forward together, you know, with that common understanding and that agreement. So that's really got to happen. Number two, it takes money to develop. The big major infrastructure, the last ones, has been the Snare Hydro, Tallston, and the road to Yellowknife. What stimulated that was mining.
Beaulieu says all governments must work together to create policy certainty and investor confidence for a prosperous NWT. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Time now for a quick break, but first here's a sneak peek of what TR Wheatley is working on for this evening's newscast.
Tanse, I'm TR Wheatley here in Norway House Cree Nation in northern Manitoba.
This is specifically about the birthing model that we are in development in the Nanantui-Wagamik Health Center of Excellence. So this is a second birthing room. It's a natural process, and the system has medicalized birthing for many years, and as a result we've had to go into confinement. We have to leave our community for at least a month. Soon our members will be able to celebrate the birth of their new life into in the community.
Coming up, I'll bring you a story about the new hospital here.
Welcome back. The Prince Albert Police Service in Saskatchewan have made an arrest following a Thursday morning shooting of a teenager. On Thursday at around 8:22 a.m., Prince Albert police were called to a home on the 900 block of 12th Street West for a report that someone had been shot. On arrival, police found a 16-year-old female with life-threatening injuries. Paramedics treated her, however, she was pronounced deceased at the scene. A 17-year-old male inside the home was arrested. He cannot be named under the Youth Justice Act and remains in custody as the investigation continues. Prince Albert Police Major Crimes Unit is asking anyone with information about this incident to come forward. Matawa First Nations, a non-profit tribal council that supports 9 First Nations in northwestern Ontario, has declared a state of emergency due to the federal government's funding cuts they say is impacting the safety and well-being of Indigenous youth and families. And they add, if decisions aren't reversed, it will only increase child apprehensions and family collapse. In an open letter to the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, Mandy Golmasti, Matawa First Nations chiefs say the federal government has caused systemic failures within Indigenous Services Canada, from funding delays, funding denials, and the misinterpretations of eligibility under Jordan's Principle and First Nation representative services. They say up to 38 of their staff are being terminated by the end of March, with further layoffs under consideration, and they predict close to 140 family units will face disruption or complete loss of support also by March. They say many families are already in crisis, including recent suicide attempts Matawa says is directly linked to this closure announcement. Matawa First Nations is calling for an emergency meeting with Minister Golmasti, and they want the federal government to restore funding for families and resolve the outstanding Jordan's Principle funding failures. One of those 9 First Nations in Northern Ontario under Matawa First Nations recently met with Premier of Ontario on Thursday. Premier Doug Ford has signed a deal with Martin Falls First Nation to allow construction of a road that will provide eventual access to the mineral-rich Ring of Fire. Martin Falls is the latest to help Ontario advance its agenda to develop mining in that area found in the northern part of the province. The Ontario government says harvesting minerals like copper, nickel, platinum, and titanium brings enormous economic potential.
Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome our government's agreement with Chief Bruce and Martin Falls First Nation to work together on the planning and construction of Martin Falls Community Access Road. Our agreement will see Martin Falls submit its environmental assessment by next February, so construction on the road can start by next August, as long as the federal government removes the duplicative approval requirements.
We now have a verdict in a legal dispute between a conservation organization in Manitoba and the Bloodvein First Nation. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation, which represents the interests of hunters, filed for an injunction against the First Nation in October. They allege Bloodvein is unlawfully blocking a highway and turning away licensed moose hunters. Justice Theodore Bach told court Thursday that the Bloodvein First Nation checkpoint will continue to operate. The nation says it's required to prevent drugs and alcohol from flowing into the dry community. And the MWF says they are pleased the First Nation has agreed in writing to allow licensed moose hunters to pass through. That is timely as moose hunting reopens on December 1st.
Bloodvein First Nation has promised on 3 separate occasions to allow licensed moose hunters past the check stop, and we fully expect that they're going to honor that promise.
As Chief of Bloodvein River First Nation, I am deeply relieved and grateful that the justice system has acknowledged what we have long said. The checkpoint is about protecting the safety, health, and the dignity of our people.
Justice Bach said in his written decision that moose hunters would be inconvenienced but not wholly prevented from entering the territory if the check stop remained. Announced earlier this week, the Saskatchewan NDP honored Joan Beatty, a former NDP MLA and one of only 3 First Nation women ever elected into the provincial legislature in Saskatchewan. Our APTN video journalist Rachel May has that story.
Mr. Speaker, on September 4th, Saskatchewan marked 120 years. In all that time, only 3 First Nation women have ever been elected to this Assembly. I am one of them. I stand here on the shoulders of the very first, Joan Beatty.
Betty Nippy Albright is the MLA for Saskatoon Centre and the Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Addictions. She says Joan Beatty should be honoured for being the first First Nations woman in the NDP cabinet. Born in 1940, Beatty was a former editor of New Breed magazine and CBC journalist. Beatty was first elected in 2003 and was Minister of Northern Affairs and Minister of Status of Women. She left provincial politics in 2007. She ran as a Liberal in the 2008 federal by-election in the Desnethy-Missinippi-Churchill River riding. Beatty brought a beaver pelt with a beaded image of the province to the legislature, where it still remains. Nippy Albright says these items are more than just art.
These are not just symbols. They are the daily reminders of who we are and of the truth this legislature must hold. Being a First Nation woman in mainstream politics is not easy. Joan Beatty showed us that it can be done with dignity, with strength, and with love for her people.
Beatty spoke at a reception held by her First Nation, Peter Ballantyne, and the NDP caucus about what it means to have an Indigenous voice at the table.
You know, they need to hear the kinds of things that we're going through, in whether it's in a small northern community, Indigenous community, the challenges that we face. You know, they need to hear that.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thank you, Rachel. We now want to tell you about this week's 3 web poll questions. Over on the website, we ask, our first question, are you affected by the Indian Act's second generation cutoff? Your answers are yes or no. Our second question is, what is the most pressing issue facing Nunavut's new MLAs in the legislature? You can answer housing, child welfare, food insecurity, national defense, or unsure. And our last question of the week was, are you in favor of advancing pipeline construction to help the economy? You can answer yes, no, or unsure. Go to our website at aptnnews.ca/poll to have your say. We have more news after the break. Stay with us. miigwech for staying with us. Halifax partly cloudy and 6, Fredericton 5. Anujiwak -12 and clear skies, La Grande River -3. Zaquinay -1 in rain, Quebec City 0. Toronto 2, Sarnia 0. -6 in Sudbury, Thunder Bay -7. The Paw -9, God's Lake -11 and clear skies. Partly cloudy in Winnipeg at -8, Dauphin -9. -7 in Saskatoon, Regina -9. Stony Rapids -12 and sun's out, Buffalo Narrows -11. In the west, Fort McMurray -10 and sunny, Peace River -14. -9 in Medicine Hat, Calgary, clear skies and -8. Partly cloudy in Vancouver at 7, Penticton +1. Fort Nelson -15, Smithers -3. -16 in Beaver Creek, Mayo -20. -19 in Fort Simpson, Yellowknife -19. Paulatuck -20, Tuktoyaktuk -18. Baker Lake -22, Arviat -21. And Arctic Bay -30, Iqaluit -14. At 6:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, you get your French dose of news with Nouvelle Nationale. Our host Kim Sullivan joins us now. Tante Kim.
Hey, Creason.
Tell us, Kim, what can viewers expect tonight?
We have a gorgeous new exhibition at the Montreal Museum of Fine Art. It's all work taken from the museum's collection. It combines rarely exhibited works with recent acquisitions, and it's the museum's first collection presentation dedicated to Indigenous artists active from the 1970s to today, who belong to so many different communities in the northeastern part of the continent, the Great Lakes, the rivers, all the way through to the ocean. So it is a pretty beautiful exhibition.
Sounds like definitely a must-see. There's also a film festival going on, and you invited the director in studio?
You are right, Creason. The Imagination LGBT2S Queer Film Festival is on, and they always had a selection of short Indigi queer films, but this year 4 feature films have been added to the program, and a panel as well, giving a voice and representation to our Indigi queer community. So it's pretty cool. And for all you national viewers, Anglophones, the films in the Indigi queer programming can actually be watched online until December 10th. So this is for my viewers and your viewers alike.
Thanks for that heads up, Kim. Could be something to do this weekend, hey?
Yes, and I'm just going to promote one more story in tonight's broadcast. We got to meet up with one of the rare Indigenous players in the Professional Women's Hockey League. She was acquired by Montreal in the off-season. She is incredible, so well-spoken, and what a player. If you are a hockey fan, you're going to want to see the goal that she did at our home opener. She was named First Star thanks to that. So pretty spectacular indeed.
Now that's a tease. We'll have to watch tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks, Kim.
Exactly. Bye, Creason.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Friday. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast in a few hours. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, have a happy Friday, Fry Bread Day. Hi, miigwech, masi cho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Akse.